Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining this panel discussion. It's so great to see so many of you in the room, but also those of you who have dialed in for this discussion. I'm delighted to be talking today about this important issue with my panellists. As Emma said, NCFE, which is an educational charity, an awarding organisation, we've been around for about 175 years, so a very long time. We have always kind of championed education, and we've worked really closely with WorldSkills UK to focus on how we can support educators primarily to achieve excellence. We've been really pleased with the Centre of Excellence programme that kicked off back in 2018, so much so that we've gone in and supported the second phase and the expansion of that programme. It's already worked with 6,000 odd educators across this country, and if you haven't got involved with it to date, my request to you is, outside of this, please do come and speak to myself, Ben, Emma, any of the other team to talk about it, and those of you who have participated in it or your institutions that have, because there's huge benefits from it. In terms of the topic for today, Alan's teed us up really nicely with a focus on social mobility. This is critically important because all of the evidence, particularly in the UK, but also internationally, points to a widening gap, and actually that things are getting worse in relation to social mobility. So last year, the IFS came out and said that social mobility was better 50 years ago in this country than it is today. So therefore, it was easier for someone from a disadvantaged background to essentially access greater wealth back in the 1940s and 50s than it was today. We cannot let that happen, and I think given the run-up to the election we've got, this has to be a huge priority for us. So today I'm joined by three panellists. So I've got Dr. Mandy Crawford-Lee, who is the first female chief executive of the University's Vocational Awards Council, UVAC, and I just want to say thank you for making today happen. We're really lucky to have that. Mandy's a doctoral graduate from Middlesex University's UK. Her professional field of interest is discursive shifts in apprenticeship reform in England and higher technical skills policy, recognising and reflecting the role of universities in delivery. So having worked on behalf of over 90 universities, UVAC has been championing degree apprenticeships since their introduction, and the value of higher and technical and professional education over 20 years, and is regarded as the most authoritative voice on all strategic and operational aspects of higher and degree apprenticeships in England. So I'm sure we're going to hear more about that, Mandy, from you. We've also got Jo sitting next to me, who is the Early Careers and Engagement and Programme Lead for HSBC. I don't need to tell everyone what HSBC is. Jo started her career as an apprentice and has worked in education and with young people for 30 years, managing apprenticeships for training providers, colleges, employers, and a children's home after. Her passion is to help people explore their potential and achieve their dreams, especially those furthest from work and those who have barriers to overcome. So again, really pertinent to today's discussion about social mobility. And finally, we're really lucky to have Suzanne Ramage join us. Suzanne has competed in the WorldSkills UK Laboratory Technician National Finals in 2019, which was held here in Birmingham at the NEC. Where she won a bronze medal and joined the WorldSkills UK Skills Champion Network in January 2020. So congratulations on your bronze medal. Suzanne graduated with a Master's in Science in Pharmaceutical Biosciences from Ulster University Coleraine in July 23, and now works as a laboratory analyst at Dale Farm, testing milk samples received from farmers to determine the quality of the produce. So you have Suzanne to thank you for the quality of the teas and coffees outside. We are also really lucky to be joined by Dr. Archana Patankar, and we're joined by Dr. Patankar from India. So thank you for joining us late, your time. And Dr. Archana is the Vice President of the NSDC, so that's the National Skills Development Corporation, which looks after research, CSR, impact financing and outcome-driven livelihood interventions and projects. So she's the Vice President of Research and Impact. Archana brings a rich experience of conceptualising, operationalising and leading policy and practice-oriented assignments such as climate change, vulnerability and adaptation, rural livelihoods, public health, applied environmental economics, and economics of the energy sector. So, as you would expect from a WorldSkills discussion, bringing that international perspective, which is going to be really important. So in a moment, what we're going to do is I'm going to hand over to Mandy to kick us off, and we're going to hear from each of our panellists for about 5 minutes who are going to talk to us. Then we're going to have a discussion on the panel, and I'm going to ask a few questions. But then I'm going to look to everyone in the audience also to ask their questions of our panellists. So, Mandy, would you like to kick us off?
Thanks very much, Philip. Yeah, good afternoon, colleagues. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to both sponsor and to appear on the panel this afternoon. I'm going to just reflect a little bit on the role of UVAC and the impact that it's had on apprenticeships and skills policy over the last 25 years. So we celebrate our 25th anniversary this year. And UVAC really has championed the notion of higher level technical professional education and skills delivered by universities and higher education providers in all of that time, and has influenced successive governments and government policy. But it's really in the field of apprenticeships, so the growth of higher and degree apprenticeships, that UVAC has really shown its support for the recognition and the value of the role of universities in what is an evolving skills system. And I think what we've heard today is that sometimes the default position is when we talk about skills, we kind of default to two things: the further education system and to young people's opportunities. Whereas actually I think what we've seen in apprenticeships, particularly over the last 15 years, is a shift to recognise that apprenticeships are not just a programme to address issues of NEET, those young people who are not in education, employment or training, or those adults who are furthest away from the labour market. But actually what we've developed is a very aspirational programme, which means that actually apprenticeships are an appropriate progression pathway for everybody, irrespective of age. Also, what we've seen, of course, in the last 10 years is the rapid development of routes into the professions that are perhaps not associated traditionally with apprenticeships or skills training. So moving out of those traditional sort of crafts and trades, those traditional industries and sectors, into the professions. And I think that's a really important point, that we start to use a different language which will help the debate around social mobility, and stop using the language that talks about a vocational or a technical learner on the one side and an academic learner on the other, or a vocational programme here and an academic programme over there. Because actually in apprenticeships what we've done, of course, is we've combined the two. It's not one or the other, it's both. So I think we're really pushing at the boundaries of the language and the references and the concepts of what an apprenticeship and skills system looks like, not just in England, but in the UK. And I think actually it's because of degree apprenticeships that we've seen a huge migration upwards in terms of perception of what an apprenticeship is. And with that, I think what we've done is demonstrate that actually apprenticeships are a good social mobility route. But it's not just about social mobility. You've got to look at the wider context in which apprenticeship sits in terms of skills policy, but also what the social good that it does in terms of some of that provision. So UVAC is unapologetically in favour of, and we are in kind of campaigning mode, an all age, all level apprenticeship and skills system. But that doesn't mean that tough priorities don't have to be made, but just look at the evidence around what we've done in terms of perceptions. So if you think that 14 years ago, we didn't have much provision that spoke to higher education providers or even higher level skills. With the advent of the coalition government, of course, and the investment in higher apprenticeships, which led to degree apprenticeships, we saw that migration upwards in terms of the potential and the possibility of what an apprenticeship could give an individual of any age, school leavers, college leavers, those already in work. Because the big issue is not young people necessarily, it's about what's happening to people already on the job, in the job, and what their potential sort of progression pathways, where their next sort of career opportunity might sit. So I think actually we need to really see it as being something which, you know, is alongside the other objective of a skills policy, which is productivity. So productivity and social mobility, I think, are really important pillars. And I think that actually they do demonstrate that at any age, you can actually achieve your career ambitions. And it does talk to an ambitious programme. But actually, if we just kind of retrench and actually say that skills investment through government, and I know you're going to ask me the question that I raised earlier, which is who pays?
The spoiler alert now.
But actually, if we look at the government investment in skills, it was this government's flagship skills programme. I suspect it will be the future government's flagship skills programme, maybe in a different framework or a different format, funded maybe differently. But actually, it has done a really good thing. It's changed perceptions. It's no longer the preserve of those kids who are failed by the school system. It can actually lead to routes into being professionally qualified. But it also gives people the chance in job roles where they aspire to be the professionals that they work alongside every day. They have a route to becoming that professional person.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. And much more to ask you about after that. Jo, I'm going to come to you next.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for having me here today. So I'm here a bit as an employer, but also somebody who started their career 30 years ago, actually on Monday, as an apprentice. I grew up in a working class background in Worcester, not far away. Mum was part-time shop worker, Dad was a tool fitter. Really, really fortunate that my mum was quite a powerful woman and really wanted the best for me and my older sister. So it was higher education all the way for us. And she really did help prepare us as well as we could. That was before the internet was created as well, so it was a lot harder. And I did start my university course doing a degree in physiotherapy up in Salford, but struggled. Later finding out that I'm actually dyslexic and ADHD. No wonder I struggled. Fortunately, my part-time employer, Marks & Spencer's, took me on full-time and I started my level 2 in retail. Didn't really know what to do. Physio was what I wanted to do from the 11 years old and no plan. And my career has had no plan ever since, to be honest. It's been like my sat-nav journey here today, all over the place. And really what has got me to where I am today is, one, the passion of giving people credible alternative pathways to drive their career education, which is a massive thing. But it's been what the 9 apprenticeship programmes have given me since. My last one just finishing about 7 years ago, and they've been in a variety of different occupations and at different levels. But they've given me, I say, not only the passion and the confidence, but all those wonderful human skills, a lot of resilience, because I've been made redundant 4 times. But from that, I've done a lot of research on what is out there, and as I said in my bio at the beginning, I have worked in FE, and it's lovely to see an old colleague from an FE today with us, but also training providers and also in a children's home, the most deprived children you will ever meet, and to see their struggles, and there was nothing for them. So I've done so much research and mentoring of young people around alternative routes and really been flying the flag for everybody on apprenticeships ever since, because they really are a credible pathway, which is how I got to HSBC and I'm running the apprenticeship programmes. And having different pathways for an organisation like us is absolutely essential. Our purpose is a world of opportunity, and we value difference is one of our values. So we want people from different walks of life. We want people who joined us at 16. We want people who've done masters and worked for 20 years come and join for us, and anything in between, because this brings with it different passions, different ideas, different points of view, different skills, ideas about how we can be more productive, etc. So having all these different programmes, be it our work experience programme, our school programmes, apprenticeships, interns, grads, masters programmes, internal apprenticeships for our colleagues to progress as well, is absolutely essential for us to be ahead of our competitors. Sorry, competitors in the room. Ahead of our competitors, but really ahead of that skills gap as well. I can talk for England on this, I'm just conscious of times. I mentioned briefly about our school programme, which has been developed by super passionate people at HSBC who belong to our ERGs, our employee resource groups, that represent any disadvantaged group, and I'm not just talking about your 8 main characteristics, but people going through the menopause, people who have experienced domestic abuse, all sorts. And we've got 19,000 colleagues in the UK who belong to those groups who are super passionate about making a difference. One of those is Social Mobility Strive. So working with them, we have built a curriculum to go out to the most in need students and communities, and really supporting teachers to understand the different sectors, the different pathways, the different recruitment processes, because they've very much changed, but also those big influences in their lives, parents who still see, unfortunately, apprentices as hairdressers, plumbers, etc. So we're trying to really make that difference, which is how we won the World Skills ED&I Network of the Year award. And there's more and more investment going in. We're about to launch a digital skills competition for schools, special lens on social mobility. So all these different pathways are essential to us, especially apprenticeships. It's made a massive difference.
Fantastic. And again, lots to think about, and I'm sure loads of questions coming in. I'm going to go now to Dr. Patankar online to tell us a bit more about the experience in India.
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are. I think we're just going to get the volume up a bit in the room, but I think that's fine.
Okay. Yeah. So before I start discussing some specifics about some of the numbers that I want to bring to the audience, I'll just quickly explain who we are. So National Skill Development Corporation is a nodal agency of the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship in India. We are a public-private partnership. So we have shareholding from Government of India as well as some of the key industry associations in India. So we have a great industry representation as well as the mandate from the government to undertake all the skill development initiatives in the country. Now, as far as India is concerned, the numbers that we have to cater to for skill development, for social inclusion, for ensuring that both, there is a gender parity in skill development. Those numbers are just incredible. So, I'm talking about our median age of the population being just 28 years, with more than 65% of the population currently in the working age group between 15 to 59. I'm talking about a huge middle class of 430 million people, which is expected to go up to more than 900 million people by 2047. And of course we have a traditional economy, traditional agrarian rural economy, where more than 50% of the population still lives and dependent on agriculture. And at the same time, we have a modern economy which is creating jobs in cloud computing and artificial intelligence and machine learning and robotics and space program, defense, and so on. So the skill development that we have to undertake has to cater to all these requirements. We have to ensure that we are covering more than 40 million students who are in the higher education segment. They're currently doing their undergrad programs, or they are in the postgraduate or the diploma programs. Almost 40-50% of them happen to be female candidates. We also have a large number, almost 67 million, who are in school education currently and waiting to be skilled. Our role as NSDC is primarily that of a catalyst in formulating policies, implementing those programs on the ground, for which we have to develop partnerships with the state governments, because India is a very, very large country of 1.4 billion people, with 28 different state governments. And we have to have engagement with them. We have to have engagement with industries through our 36 sector skill councils, the not-for-profits, the academia, the international agencies, the international programs like World Skills, for instance. And at the same time, we have to be very proactive as far as our grassroots initiatives are concerned. So for our rural economy in particular, we have to think about skills which can not only help them get jobs for their income enhancement, but we have to seriously look at developing self-employment among the rural population. So for us, this is a humongous task, but at the same time, we also have different programs designed to sort of cater to the ever-growing demand from population coming from various types of skills. And this skill development actually begins post the formal education that people have received. So once they are out of schools and colleges, our job begins to make them employable, to increase that employability quotient, to meet the demand, the ever-changing demand coming from the industries, from the services sector, from the traditional rural economy, and at the same time also ensure that there is a social inclusion. There is because again, India is a very diverse country, so we have different languages, we have different cultures. 50% of our population is women, and we have to ensure that they also get equal chance in the growing economy, in all the new sectors which are coming in. So one of the flagship programs of Government of India is the National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme, through which we are trying to encourage both men and women, but particularly female candidates, to become apprentices in different industries. This is one scheme which is actually supported by an act which came in 1961. So our government actually passed an apprenticeship act in 1961. Since 2016, we are actually providing financial support to industries so that they can get more and more apprentices on board, because we believe that on the job training is the best possible training and skilling that can happen for anybody. And through this program, we are creating exclusive batches which will cater to the female candidates, which will also cater to the populations who normally are what we term as marginalized communities, where they get a chance to sort of get better paying jobs, they get a chance to, they basically get an opportunity to become a part of the economic growth. So we try to give them additional infrastructure, flexible training, and a very safe, gender-sensitive environment so that more and more girls can be encouraged to join the workforce. Um, we are not only we have not only identified more than 450 job roles which are focused only on women's skill training, and this is all aligned to what we call as our national skill qualification framework, but we are also promoting participation of girls and women in the industry 4.0 related jobs. So that includes data analytics, artificial intelligence, hard skills as well, including automobile mechanics and welding and those kind of jobs. We are trying to create industry partnerships so that more girls and women can be absorbed in those new age economic opportunities. Uh, I'm happy to say over here that since 2007, we are also actively engaged in World Skills Competition. In fact, just a few days back, we concluded the India Skills Competition as well. And we find that at this level, at this stage, we are able to get people from our provincial level, from the state level, to the national and the international level. There is a great participation and enthusiasm that we see from our young people, and because of participation in these kind of events, we find that there is a great focus on skills, on vocational education, and we are trying to encourage more and more youth, particularly girls and people from marginalized communities, to come forward to become part of the vocational training and to get the opportunity to excel in different sectors which are opening up with economic growth. So we have a very responsible role to play as the economy moves forward, and at the same time we have to be conscious of this fact that social inclusion, social mobility, upward mobility of our people, becomes the focus of whatever activities we carry out. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Archana. And finally then, Suzanne, coming to you to talk about your experience.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here today. I'm just glad I've got a voice because I woke up on Tuesday without one. But When I completed my A levels back in 2000, I decided that university wasn't the path for me. So I actually took a year out, and then I studied for my NVQ level 3 administration, actually through a government programme back then called Steps to Work, which is pretty similar to our apprenticeships at the minute. I did that for a few years until the place I was working in actually closed down. I then did classroom assistant back in my college, but it was whenever my son was doing his transfer test and he was waiting on getting his school, what school he had gotten into. It was whenever he was getting that through. I had said to him, I'm like, doesn't matter what school you get into, as long as you end up doing something you enjoy. Well, I went to work the next day and I was like, I hate my job. I always had a passion for forensic, and my A levels were maths, chemistry and biology, so I was very scientific background. And thankfully, at this point, I worked for my brother, and I went to Aaron and I'm like, Aaron, I want to go back to uni. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I want to go back to uni. And he's like, I'm not going to stand in your way, but can you help me out? And I'm like, of course. So we had a transition period where I was able to show him the basics of what I did day to day, and he took over my role. I then enrolled on the foundation degree. I felt like because I'd been out of study for so long, I felt I needed a refresher course. So I enrolled on a foundation degree in medical and applied science, and it was through my first year of the foundation degree that I was registered for the WorldSkills UK Lab Tech competition, which was the first time it had actually been ran in regionals. I remember a week before the regional heat, one of my friends actually rang up and they had booked a holiday to sunny Beach, Bulgaria. And she rang me up and she goes, Sandra's not going. You could get to Sunny Beach for £25. The holiday's paid. All you need to do is change the name. The first thing I said to her, when do you leave? It was the day before the heat. I said, no, I can't do it. And she's like, what? She looked at me as if it grew 3 heads. I never thought, whenever I was going down to that regional heat, that I would actually get to the national finals, let alone win a medal. But for me, it was the experience. It was also because I told my tutor, Diane, that I would do it. And I didn't want to let her down at the end up. But yeah, whenever I got my medal, I remember one of the skills champions at the time, she came running across the room, gave me the biggest hug. She then pushed me back and she sat down with her finger and she goes to me, never, ever doubt yourself again. So she gave me the confidence, basically. It was basically affirming what everyone else was trying to tell me. But in a way, whenever I got the email through to join the Skills Champion Alumni, I jumped at it. I knew, because I was a mature student, I was never getting to internationals. I was never getting to compete any further. So becoming a Skills Champion was my way of giving back to WorldSkills. And it's brought me here.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say again, congratulations on your bronze medal, but also thank you for giving back in that way. Mandy, first of all, I just want to sort of promote the articles. We've got 2 authors on the panel, so Archana and Mandy have written articles for breaking down barriers to opportunity through skills excellence. It's a really fantastic collection of articles. And in yours, Mandy, I think you kind of write really compellingly about the role that degree apprenticeships can play in supporting social mobility. I think there's been at times, over the last few years, some critique of higher and degree apprenticeships, and we've probably all seen articles whereby, the big corporates, the PwCs, the E&Ys are using it to, focus on people who've already got qualifications, etc. And that can, give a little bit of a negative perception of it. But can you talk about how degree apprenticeships can really drive social mobility?
It's a fair point, I think, Philip, that at times UVAC has been the lonely voice, the sole voice in defence of the concept of degree apprenticeships. And I love the fact that in England we have that stretch from level 2 craft and trade through technical, associate professional, into professional managerial job roles. That is unprecedented in terms of what we have created as a system in England and increasingly influencing other nations. I think often there has been a bit of a purist view. It kind of harks back to an historic view of what an apprenticeship is, what an apprentice should be and should look like. And I think actually some of those voices have been amplified over time. And those views, I think, are equally wedded to the idea that perhaps apprenticeships and government investment in skills or public investment in skills should be about a social inclusion route for those who are young and unqualified. And you're right, we've had really since sort of the time of Anne Milton, this notion that perhaps there's been a middle class land grab around degree apprenticeships, that actually getting on a degree apprenticeship programme is tougher for young people leaving school and colleges than it is to apply and get a place at Oxbridge. And I think we should be doing far more to encourage employers to think differently about their talent pipeline in terms of recruiting young people who are aspirational about going into the workplace and learning on the job and through the job to recruit those individuals. But apprenticeships, through degree apprenticeships, through the growth of higher degree apprenticeships, have become far more aspirational, I think, than it being about that first step into the workplace. It is about the long-term personal view of where somebody wants to be in terms of their career aspirations. But I think actually to kind of make those arguments denies the impact, the positive impact of degree apprenticeships, because, back in the day when I was in government and leading on higher apprenticeship national policy, we were looking at those standards, those particular occupational standards through frameworks that spoke to the more traditional sectors in industry. Yes, we were moving into areas like accounting and sort of project and some form of management. But what we've done with degree apprenticeships is, A, reconceptualise what an apprenticeship is, recognise that actually you can take somebody in work from a low-level job role and put them through a training programme and they can professionalise their skills. But we created a recognised route that actually says degree apprenticeships are not an alternative to university. They're another choice, but actually the same academic outcomes, the same standards, the same qualifications typically are an outcome of that apprenticeship programme. And I think, the fact that we've opened up the professions into most public sector, more highly paid roles, nursing, allied health, leadership and management, medical doctor, is something quite powerful. And I think we should see it as being actually, again, it goes back to what is the purpose of apprenticeships? If we're putting productivity for social mobility, then actually we need to focus on buying productivity. But we know that social mobility and social good is also really, really equally important. So we're not forgetting that. I think more can be done to think about the way in which certainly providers measure their social mobility impact. Some universities are doing it better, some higher education providers are doing it better, looking at first in family to progress, for example. But I think the idea of actually cutting off or restricting provision in apprenticeships in England to just up to and including level 5 rolls us back 15 years and forgets that somebody in work wants to know how they can progress in work into that next level of learning, into their next job role. And I think that's what apprenticeships can do at every level, which is equip people to step into their next level of learning. So I think actually we do need to see it not in isolation. Apprenticeships were first and foremost, the objective, the dual objective was, of course, productivity and moves towards supporting further access, further inclusion. But I think, universities have done a really good job. We've got we've got some of the sort of the most prestigious universities in the world now delivering in that space, which can only help the perception. It's no longer the choice of other people's children. It's now a choice for everybody. So I think when we talk about social mobility, we talk about EDI, very important. But let's look at the wider concept of what we want from an apprenticeship system. Do we want it to be just for SMEs who actually put up their own barriers to access? I think a 5% contribution was not enough. I think they should have probably contributed 10 or 25% contribution to their, the skills training that was going into their own workforce. Some of them have now got free provision. When we had a previous system, what change were we making around social mobility and widening access when it was fully funded for those SMEs? That's my big question.
Well, we're going to come back to the role of the different parties. So I'm going to come back to that. I'm interested to see if we've got some employer views also in the room. But moving to an employer, and kind of Mandy talks there about the critical role of employers having that strategy and approach. And obviously, HSBC being a household name can cherry pick and take the best candidates from anywhere. But I'm really interested to hear about the thinking at HSBC in relation to ensuring that people from a range of backgrounds have access and gain employment at your organisation. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, could you imagine how boring it would be if we had all white, male, middle class from Oxbridge who did economics? Can you imagine?
Well, nothing would get done, would it?
219,000 of those. Wouldn't it be boring? But you wouldn't have that creativity, you wouldn't have that life experience, you wouldn't have those different points of views, those different skills, etc. to bring in. And yeah, we don't need to advertise our positions. We could fill them 20 times over, but what we want is the right people, and we want to have this world of opportunity for people who are furthest away, those who haven't got that social capital, who are the third generation of potentially being unemployed, etc. So it's really, really valuable to us to have people from all walks of life come and work for us, because also that represents our customers as well. There's perhaps more empathy of somebody who's in financial crisis, if you've been there yourself or a member of your family have. So it's really, really vital to us to have people from different backgrounds. We're also finding with our apprentices, but also with our normal employees, I hate calling them normal, but couldn't think of another word, who are from low socioeconomic backgrounds, their commitment is second to none. We are not only seeing retention improve, but also tenure improved as well, but also productivity. So one part of our bank has actually gone, do you know what, degree apprentices are amazing, we want more of those, and like many other employers are starting to lower those graduate numbers to get more apprentices in. So it's vitally important, right from those entry-level roles for us, right up to the degree apprentices who are rolling off into sort of middle management roles and beyond in all sectors, be that digital, customer service, risk and compliance, whatever it is. This talent from different walks of life bring that diversity of thought, experience and skills.
Yeah, great. And I think one of the most encouraging things over the past, if we take it 10 years, is how the narrative has shifted on that. It might have started out as we're doing this because we know we should, try and improve social mobility. And it certainly feels that for most employers, they are seeing and they're reaping the benefits of widening the gate, not lowering the bar. So that's really encouraging. Archana, in your article, you reference an amazing number of different initiatives, which I was kind of researching in advance. And you also talk about some of the ways you're trying to attract different groups, particularly women. I'm really interested to see if you're starting to see the impact of those initiatives in opening up opportunities to disadvantaged people of all ages, but also young people in particular.
Yeah, we do. Because most of our initiatives are actually targeted at people who have not had a chance to go to good universities, get the highly priced education. So if you see how our skill development initiatives are also structured and priced, we try to impart skills at the minimum possible cost to the candidates. In fact, most of these skill initiatives are actually either supported through the government programs or they are supported through the corporate social responsibility or philanthropic funds. In fact, we have quite a lot of initiatives going on right now where we are trying to get young people to join the workforce in districts affected by coal mining, in impoverished districts of the country where agriculture is predominantly dependent on rainfall. Of course, with the climate change and with other heat stresses and everything, their traditional occupations, traditional livelihoods are threatened. And at the same time, we do not really have a schooling system which is making them employable in different sectors, especially the modern sectors of the economy. And that's where we have to take these youth, give them additional training so that with whatever school education or little higher education that they would have had, they get a decent chance of improving their lives. So we consciously work in districts which are, affected by either, loss of traditional livelihoods, affected by mining, affected by maybe some kind of a social strife, districts which are impoverished. So our skill development initiatives are particularly focused on these people. And we are not only trying to bring them into apprenticeship programs because we believe that that's the best way to sort of engage them directly to become a part of the workforce somewhere. They also learn on the job. And then to that extent, their career progression, their retention in the workforce becomes easier. But we are trying to sort of create pathways for them to make learning a lifelong exercise for them. So it should not be that they become a part of the workforce and continue to remain in the workforce as low wage workers. But we should also give them RPL or other sorts of training, maybe some upskilling, reskilling, so that they have a decent chance to move from one sector to another. Today, you see a lot of young people in India coming from socially disadvantaged backgrounds, getting into IT or AI, ML kind of sectors, getting into retail, because retail is one major sector of our economy, getting into logistics. There are so many opportunities coming up in these newer sectors, and we are trying to train rural youth. We are trying to train youth from marginalized communities to take up job roles in these sectors. But our next objective is going to be to upskill them so that they don't remain at that entry level alone. But we do see a lot of impact on the ground of different programs that we are undertaking.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Archana. And then, Suzanne, I'm really interested to hear a bit more about your own experience and someone who's benefited from the World Skills UK competitions. What's your view on what more needs to be done to ensure that more young people can access opportunities like you've had?
To be honest, I think the main one would be getting, especially the World Skills competitions, more known.
Yeah.
As a skills champion, I have attended national apprenticeship shows with World Skills. I've attended UCAS shows, and a lot of the young people that have actually come up to us are like, "Who are you? I've never heard of you." And I know back home that's even more so. Hairdressing, the hairdressers know. They know. But yeah, it's not very well known. And I'd say that would be the biggest.
Yeah.
The biggest.
Okay. So it's been a really common theme, I think, across each kind of overview, the critical role that careers advice and guidance plays in supporting this social mobility. And Joe, you spoke about what I would describe as your grit and determination in getting those opportunities for yourself. But I suppose in a broad level, what more can be done in relation to careers advice and guidance from different actors, whether that's school, central government? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be done. And don't get me wrong, I work with a lot of schools across the UK who do a good job of careers advice and guidance. But I have to say, even that is dated. For instance, they're doing mock interviews, fantastic, but they're competency-based. Nobody uses that anymore, it's strength-based. Don't understand really about how apprenticeships work, how can they apply from one central place. Haven't got a clue about T-levels at all. So I think it's about us all working together. I've offered to do CPD in our partner schools across the UK. Some have taken me up, some haven't. But I think it's about the triangle that we spoke about earlier. I think it is government, whether that's through Ofsted, through the Gatsby benchmark, whatever, really driving that education for teachers and careers advisors. But I think it's also, we've got a responsibility as an employer to help teachers understand as well.
Okay, and Archana, I'm just going to come back to you because you've referenced the Skill India Digital Hub, and I'm really interested in the role and the work that is being done in India around careers advice and guidance, and what maybe we can learn and others can learn from that.
So Skill India Digital is a digital platform that we have created. It is created by the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. Considering the large numbers that we have to train, and I'm talking of millions here at any given point in time. The biggest challenge in the skilling ecosystem in the past was we were able to train people, but we were not able to track their career progression because there wasn't really any mechanism whereby the same people can come back to us, or we can track how many different skilling initiatives they have undertaken, how we can potentially reach out to them to upskill them or reskill them. So Skill India Digital works in the following manner. Any student, any potential workforce entrant can get onto this portal. There is a website and there is also an app which can be used on the smartphone. They can get themselves registered over there, and when they're registered, we do what we call as eKYC, which is like trying to check their credentials through the Aadhaar card. The Aadhaar card is like your social security number, and everybody in India has that now, so that we know that this is the same person whom we will be offering different programs in future, and we'll be able to track their career progression. Then there are a number of courses on this website. Many of those courses are actually freely available. So they can avail of these online programs. They can also look at the different skill development centers in their region. They are all mapped. So if you go to the portal, you can see the map of India. You can see all the locations of different skill development centers. Some of these centers are run by the government. Some of these are private centers. We have a list of skill universities also. And almost all the programs are listed over there, which are either online available or they can enroll for the batches and do a physical training later. So this also gives a good opportunity for people to develop soft skills. So besides the regular skills which are required for getting into a workforce, there are a number of courses which are available freely as soft skills. So this also offers like a lifelong learning opportunity. There is no age limit over here. Anybody can get onto the portal, register themselves, and see if they are interested at any point of their career in some particular area. They can choose that area over there and see what sort of courses are made available. Now, this helps us to standardize a lot of things in the skilling ecosystem. Otherwise, things would be really scattered. So everybody who is now doing training under any government program gets registered on this portal. So we are able to sort of bring everyone onto the same portal because of this registration. We can track their career progression. We can potentially offer a number of courses to them. And the certification is also done through the portal. And this if there would have been a chance to sort of game the system in some way or issue certifications without really completing the skilling properly, many of these things are sort of taken care of because everything is happening, all the courses are getting conducted through this portal. So we are also like recording the attendance. We have a biometric attendance. We are recording the sessions. We know what courses, what curriculum is there, which is the training center where this training is happening. So we are trying to sort of collate the entire information, make it easier for people to come onto one platform to get skilled. And at the end of the day, of course, then for the government, it becomes easier to track the numbers, to report the numbers, to understand what kind of lacunae might be there in the system and to address them.
Perfect.
So
And
everything that
lots to
happens,
learn for
yeah,
us, I think, over
yeah,
here. So
you can have a look at the website and app. It's a very fascinating, digital platform that we have created.
brilliant. I did say I'll come to you on this, Mandy, and I'm going to pose you back the question that you asked the panel before. And so if you could kind of quickly give your view on who's responsible really for, driving the change, investing in this. Is it government, employers, or individuals? And have we got the balance right here?
I don't know. My view is that we need a proper conversation about who contributes to lifelong learning, to careers and skills aspirations. We've seen the largest investment in apprenticeships through state funding, through the levy. That is clearly posing a challenge to some bits of the employer market. But I think actually we need to think about the lifelong learning entitlements, so the way in which HE is going to be funded going forward is changing. How will that impact in terms of types and style of programmes? Now, that consultation document talked a lot about actually aligning that LLE provision outside of the typical undergraduate, postgraduate programmes with employer needs. But there was no mention of what contribution the employer might make in terms of actually meeting those requirements. So I think actually it requires the three elements to be well understood, perhaps incentivised, but we can't continue to rely on government to kind of, pull its own levers. We have to think about, it goes back to some historic views on the labour market back in 2010 ahead of the coalition government, which talked about if we're going to narrow the gap in terms of the difference between our productivity and our nearest OECD competitors, we need to all be ambitious, both individuals, government and employers. And I think we still haven't quite got there in terms of ambition. Going back to the degree apprenticeship argument, I would say that actually it's made a huge difference in terms of HE participation, the fact that you've got Russell Group universities who are now accepting that actually they are a deliverer of training, whereas even 5 years ago they said, but we don't deliver training. We deliver academic qualifications that may or may not be integrated with the workplace. They are really shifting their own pedagogy and practice and are now actually emerging with signature pedagogies around how you deliver, where you're using the workplace as a site of learning. We can't do it extraneous to the workplace requirements, I know that much, but it is going to be a shared responsibility. So I think there is a whole different debate around who pays.
Yeah, and I think my request would be, as part of that debate, that we also include what is increasingly being talked about: how do we create a tertiary sector, and what's the role of universities, colleges, and ITPs, and how they work together in delivering that provision as well. Suzanne, I'm really interested to hear about the skills that you developed, and Archana talked about how India is focusing on soft skills. I think in the previous panel they were referenced as workplace skills. I call them essential skills. But can you talk about how the experience helped you personally hone your skills outside of those technical skills?
Outside of the technical ones?
Yeah.
Well, since I got the bronze medal and became a skills champion, it has increased my confidence. 2 years ago, I would never have been sitting up here in front of anybody talking. That would be definitely the main one. But I think because I had so many previous jobs, I had all the soft skills to carry forward, and it's developed them as well. Organisation, but also being a single parent and studying and working part-time alongside training for the competition and all the skills. It's definitely time management and organisation.
Yeah, I'd probably add resilience on the back of that as well.
Yeah.
So I'm very mindful of time, and I'm really keen that we get some questions from the audience. So There is going to be a mic going around, so please wait for that mic so that everyone can hear you. And please say your name and where you're from before you ask your question. Do we have any questions in the audience? Brilliant, up at the front. Oh, sorry. No, we've got one at the back. We'll come to you next. Hello.
Oh, hi, Gary Owens from Pearson. It's a question really for the whole panel. You've talked about how vocational education, apprenticeships, etc., drive social mobility. So my challenge is it? And the reason I ask that, if you look at what's going on with the numbers of our under 18s who are either socially inactive, you've seen the social mobility index been the worst it's been in living memory. We're seeing defunding of level 3 qualifications. Suzanne, you wouldn't have actually be able to progress in your pathway at your start point today because that pathway doesn't exist. What do we need to make sure that we can maintain the momentum, particularly when we're starting seeing entry-level roles being either augmented or replaced by technology?
Don't start with me.
Okay, I'm going to start with Joe. I'm going to start with
I
Joe.
don't mind going.
Go on, Joe.
I think partly that under 18, that 16 to 18, is that students aren't being told about apprenticeships, T-levels, etc. It's you go to university. We hire hundreds of level 3 apprentices every year, and I can guarantee, except for about one per cohort, they're all over 18. We get very, very few 16 to 18-year-olds come and join us on an apprenticeship. Very few. It's all go to sixth form, go to sixth form, go to sixth form. So I think there needs to be an education piece there as well. I have to say I can't speak for every employer, but compared to before we started taking on apprenticeships, our social mobility has certainly grown, as has ethnicity, gender, etc. as well.
Well, as a parent of a 17-year-old who actually started on an apprenticeship at the age of 16, there was no support for him, and he was actually let go after 6 months after his probation period was up. But I don't want to name the apprenticeship.
No, that's not.
But yeah, I think there's just, as you say, they're more over 18, so they weren't expecting him to get through their rigorous application. There was 3 steps to it, and he flew through them all. But just at that end, there wasn't the support for him. He was dealing with issues, mental health issues as well, which again wasn't supported at all. So really, there is the support level needs to be increased just for the younger age.
Absolutely, and I would actually say if we're going to, we're actively trying to give people from low socioeconomic backgrounds a chance, employers need to make sure there is that support mechanism in place, because unfortunately with low social mobility does come other potential health issues, etc., let alone imposter syndrome and confidence, etc. So I think employers don't just hire them, they've got to put the support in place as well.
Brilliant, okay.
Just a quick word. I think it's very easy to focus on the deficits. I think we need to look at where we have success. If I think about degree apprenticeships, policing, police forces are recruiting a different candidate to reflect better the communities in which they serve. I think that's a tick in the box. But I think actually we do need to do far more, absolutely, to support young people in their aspirations to actually step out of compulsory education and into the workplace. But that's down to employers. So what is the employer appetite for recruitment at that age? And wouldn't you rather that those young people were in a much more heavily guided learning hour programme than just perhaps, statutory minimum 20% off the job, for example? I'm just saying. So I think there's lots of complexities. I do really favour fully funding the 16 to 18 provision out of taxation as opposed to out of the apprenticeship levy.
Yeah, agree. Okay, one last question we've got time for very quickly up at the front.
Thank you. My name's Lynette Leith. I'm from Hull College, and my question is actually about the employee piece. So just very briefly, we've talked about, obviously we have HSBC here who are doing wonderful things. And you mentioned, Philip, at the beginning of the panel about that balance between sort of the level 2, level 3 apprenticeships and how levy might be spent on the high degree.
Yeah.
And there's criticism there, but I actually agree with Mandy. It's about a system that allows access and entry at any level. And like the police, the NHS, there are brilliant things happening there. So where we need that change with perhaps our employers, those bigger employers are looking at it. My, I guess, question or something I'd like to discuss with the panel and hear the panel's opinion on, where is the mechanism for that change and where are the levers? Is it a government drive that's needed so that more big employers are like the exemplar of HSBC and are able to contribute to that skill system where an apprentice can start at any level and we're not sort of pitting one off against the other? How do we get there? Is it solely the employee who needs to make that change, who affects the change? Is it a government lever or government mechanism? I'm just interested in what the panel think.
I think it's all of the above. But as an employer, it's good for us to speak to other employers and be that role model for them of what we are doing from a CSR perspective, but also the impact, the productivity, etc., that it's helping us. There needs to be more of that. We've done a lot of that recently, but there needs to be more. But I think, again, governments and the education system.
I think government would always want to sort of intervene. What will make the difference for the SME market? It's such a sort of catch-all, isn't it?
Yeah.
We know that the levy was introduced to engage large employers in apprenticeships where they didn't engage before. Now we're saying, but we've got too much focus on large levy-paying employers, and we're kind of cutting out the opportunities for SMEs and a younger cohort. So I think any system will have its problems, but I think what we've got actually is a recognition that yes, government are investing heavily through the levy, hypothecated tax or not, and SMEs are benefiting from that. What is stopping them from actually recruiting in a way that actually creates a sustainable job for that individual that supports progression? And just to say that UVAC is as much about progression as it is about actually protecting, a bit of the market that our university members belong to or deliver in. It is about actually where are we supporting employers to have that ambition that says actually if I train you, you might leave me. Well, actually good, they're progressing. They're kind of being more socially mobile. They're creating a much, greater sort of travel to work area that they perhaps haven't enjoyed before. So I think we need to kind of get over some of those inherent structural issues, but an impossible task, I would say.
Just one last thing I want to draw in, Archana, because you talk quite interestingly about the public-private partnership nature of what you're doing in India. So just what are some very high-level, quick learnings that we can take over here around how government can work with the private sector?
Okay, so I have to put a disclaimer here that not all of that we do is without challenges. That's bound to happen. It's not that everything that we do has been great so far. The journey has been difficult, but at the same time, yes, there have been a lot of learnings in this process. Because we are a public-private organization, there is a mandate which is also coming to us from the industries. So we have these sector skill councils who represent different industries, their interests, and they sort of guide this process of where exactly the skill gaps exist and how can we help them to fill up those gaps. So on the one hand, there is this big educational system in India where you have so many government universities, so many private universities, but there is always a clear disconnect between the kind of education that the university provides and what the industry demands. Because industry demands are ever-changing, and then now we have actually come to a situation where 5 years down the line, there would be some jobs which don't even exist today. So how do we really, try to bridge that gap? And that is the biggest challenge that we have today. So we have to focus on what we call a school to work transition. That, okay, people are coming out of the education system. We know that there are certain skills which they do not have to sort of immediately enter the workforce. And with the private sector initiative, either through the apprenticeship program where government kind of offers a subsidy so that industries can take up more apprentices, or even the skill development programs and in different districts in collaboration with the state governments, sometimes through CSR, sometimes through other industry collaboration activities. Our learning has been that, you know, everybody needs skilled workforce. It's just that industries also sometimes are afraid of doing a lot of skilling because, as you rightly mentioned, they are scared that, once we skill them, people will leave.
Yeah.
And therefore, they would like to keep them at that entry level and not really skill them too much. And that happens with mainly the SME segment. And in India, what happens is 95% of our industries, manufacturing is actually SME. Just 5% is these large scale manufacturers who do skilling on their own, because without that skilling, they do not even let people enter the workforce. So it's largely to this SME segment, and the big chunk of it is the services sector, the retail, the logistics, IT, and so on that we are trying to cater to. The path is not always very easy, because one is that people themselves have become very aspirational over the years, the youth. So you might have entry lots of industries and service sector, but people may not want to join them. Today there is a clear shift that we see. In fact, there are two, three things that we see over here. I don't know if everything applies to other countries, but people do not want to migrate anymore in search of jobs. And maybe largely COVID has contributed to it. After the pandemic, there is this whole thing that wherever I am, I need to get a job over here. If I don't get it, then I'm happy with whatever support I have from my family, but I'm not going to go somewhere else in search of jobs. So really matching that demand supply gap is becoming difficult, where the jobs are and where people are staying. Secondly, youth have become very aspirational. They want a white collar job. They may not want to get into manufacturing. They may not want to dirty their hands. So, somewhere you have to also make those jobs more attractive. So, we are trying to sort of promote more skilling in these jobs, trying to see that there is a career progression available to them so that they get attracted to that sector more, and it is no longer treated like a typical blue collar job. Uh, and then for this, there has to be a constant dialogue with the industry, constant changes with the way the policies and programs are implemented. And at times, of course, it becomes a challenge because the numbers are just overwhelmingly large for us. But we try our level best. We are able to report a lot of numbers, but at the same time, we know that there is a lot more that needs to be done. And ultimately, we are looking at our country to become the skill capital of the world, because there is this large workforce which is available. So we are also looking at skilling them, and let them take up these job roles even outside the country, because that's where the future of our workforce might lie. So, I
Brilliant.
mean, that might be a little different perspective from what maybe countries in Europe might be talking about right
Well,
now.
yeah,
But for us,
different scale,
yeah,
but similar
yeah,
challenges, I think. So look, I'm going to have to draw it to a close there, but I just wanted to say, on behalf of everyone here, thank you so much to our panelists. It's been a really interesting discussion. I'm going to